Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of After Dinner Mints. Before we begin, I highly encourage everyone watching to join us in the Art Blocks Discord. For those watching us on the live stream, there will be people in the community chatting in the Art Blocks Mints channel. A link to our Discord can be found in the description of this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our weekly show. And now I want to introduce our guest for this afternoon. We have generative artist revdancatt.
Hey, hey, hey.
How's it going,
How
Dan?
you
How are you
doing?
doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much. It's good to see you after all this time.
Yeah, we were just chatting a couple minutes ago, and the last time that I spoke with Dan was actually back in May when we had the original After Dinner Mints on Discord, which was just an audio only. And
Uh-huh.
I felt really bad because that was a time when, we had it at like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock Eastern, I believe, is when the start was. And you're in, the UK, right? So it was like
Yeah,
4 or 5 in the morning.
it was a good job that one was on like audio only because I had looked really tired. But now you can see my beautiful face,
Yeah.
so that's good.
No, I'm really excited to chat with you today. But yeah, let's go ahead and kick things off. I know we have a lot to kind of cover. What if you don't mind? Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Daniel Catt. I'm here in the UK and I'm an artist. I actually trained as an artist. My like degree was an arts degree, and I was doing foundation art before there, so I've always had an interest in art. But I hit the internet just as the World Wide Web was taking off, and when I finished my degree, I kind of had this choice in life of doing the internet thing or being an artist, and they were just like throwing bags of money at people for the internet. So I was like, oh, do the internet. And then I spent like 20 years after that saying, oh, I wish I'd been an artist and gone back to doing art. So I kind of dabbled in art and all that time, but the last 4 years have been me trying to get back to actually being an artist rather than all the other stuff.
Great. And then, when you started getting into art, started, figuring out that this is something that you want to do, who were some of the artists that you kind of looked up to and inspired your work?
Yeah, there's a couple. Bridget Riley was the first artwork that really spoke to me. There's a piece of artwork called Kiss that's just like a weird. It's like just black and white, and it's a curve that's nearly touching itself, and it's like really sparked this thing in my brain because before all the art I've been exposed to was like here's a landscape and here's a scene. It's all very figurative, and then for this very stark black and white image that was just like where all the energy was just along the edges of where the white touched the black, and I was like, oh right, there can be more to there can be this juxtaposition going on. So Bridget Riley, I think, was the first person who really got me excited in art, and then after that, I got there's a guy called William Latham, which I've got up on my screen. He's a an artist who um, studied like evolutionary art that was all about taking shapes and getting the computer to render these shapes. And then you kind of got to start choosing. Um, so here he's got like one in the middle, and then he had like mutations based on it.
Hmm.
So he kind of had this thing going on about breeding art and growing kind of growing art. So he talked a lot more about being kind of a gardener, where the computer would do growing these shapes and forms, and then he would just come in and he'll get rid of the weeds and then kind of nurture the ones that he liked the look of. So this is a guy called William Latham, and here he is sat. And this is a scene that I'm sure is very familiar with quite a lot of art blocks artists at the moment, are sitting in a room with all your computer printouts all around you. And this is from 1987.
Wow.
So when I saw his work and his computer graphics, I was like, oh, right, this is interesting because confession of an artist, I'm terrible at drawing. Like I'm terrible at art. I always wanted to. When people say, oh, anyone can be an artist. And I was like, I just can't. The things I have in my head, I can't draw. So then I turned to photography and the computer as a way to solving that. I could teach the computer what I wanted it to do and then get it to produce results. And then kind of got to pick the best ones. So that's how I got started.
Great. And then, what was your introduction into this crazy NFT crypto space that we're all a part of right now?
It. I mean, how do I go about this? So if I go back to William Latham a second, so I've got this image here. So if I just blow it up a little bit, um, one part of my arts degree was trying to visualize data. So I had this system where uh, you got these different shapes. So I got this blue and yellow shape. I'm not sure if you can see the point. I'm kind of pointing to it. There we go. Well, I was taking academic papers and then encoding the data in it. So, like looking through all the words and getting key terms. So, this blue and yellow one here represents a biology paper because
Mm.
I would take all these key terms, these markers, and then turn them into a genetic string that we would see as a hash code now. And then there's another one down here. There's another blue one here. Whereas these red ones are like chemistry papers. And then as a way of visualizing data, you would then breed the blue and red one together. So you take their DNA string and match them up and cross them over, and then look at the result, which would be like this blue and pink one up here. And you go, oh, that's a biochemistry paper. But it was using these strings of like the DNA thing. And then later on, if I go over to Twitter, like if I go back to Bridget Riley's Kiss. So Bridget Riley's Kiss looks a bit like this. So this is from 2019. It goes back about a year. And then I wrote some code that did variations on Bridget Riley's work. So bringing in these different colors, different angles, and then some stripes as well. But the fun thing about this is this string up here, this is the code that represents this particular artwork.
Hmm.
So if you lost the artwork, you take that code, you plug it back into the program, and then it'll reproduce this image. So even going back, so this work I was doing here, which is the same thing, this is 30 years old. So this
Oh,
piece of
wow.
art is probably older than a lot of the people watching this video. And that was artwork generated on hash. Any of these, I could take the hash, plug it back into the program, and it would recreate the artwork again. Only it took a lot longer in those days. So this would be done overnight. I'd set the computer away making 200 of them, and then the next day pick all the best ones and you breed them together, and it makes a bunch more. So that was 30 years ago, and then like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was doing this type of thing, and then um, I turned to pen plotting, which we'll talk about in a tick. And I was like,
Mhm.
no, I'm no longer doing digital artwork. I'm doing physical artwork. I love physical artwork.
Yeah.
I love print. I love ink. I love all of that type of stuff. And then I saw people starting to do NFTs, and art blocks kind of popped up. And I was like, I am not doing this. There's no way I'm going back into digital. I spent the last 4 years escaping from digital. I made that mistake all the way back. But then I was like, but this is actually kind of close to my heart. This is kind of the original type of artwork that I was doing. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll do it. And then I just started working on it, and that's how I ended up on art blocks.
Maybe we can go and kind of see some of your early generative art pieces that you created.
Well, I mean, I've just been through them with the bit over here. Some of the other stuff, I'll go through this one really quickly. So this is there was an artist who did Garfield minus Garfield. I'm not sure if anyone remembers that, but it's taken the Garfield cartoon and removing Garfield from it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So, and this was an element of just studying how things are done. So here, this is basically just taking the Garfield cartoon and then stripping everything out and then having a whole bunch just sort of so here these backgrounds being slightly slanted, it was studying how he drew all his cartoons. So most of the time they'll just be plain and boring, or they'd have an object in, but then sometimes he would put these gradient backgrounds in, and sometimes he would make the base lower or higher. So I decided I was going to get a computer program that just automatically generated these on a daily basis, and then publish them. Is it art? I don't really know, but it certainly amused me. But again, it was taking some work and then really studying how it went, and we ended up with this type of thing again, which is fairly familiar, like the square format and all these different color palettes and things being slightly different. And then if I go forward again, then I started working with neural networks. And then this was a project where I'd be taking stories from the news and headlines, and then feeding them into a neural network as a training data set to then kind of produce text that will put into these cartoon boxes. And then once it has, and some of the images are coming from the news articles as well, and it would produce these kind of uh, weird things. So if you zoom in, like Neon Genesis misses the girl who feels nothing. Swing okay, swing deep inside her PDF. Poetry leaks across the world. It kind of fascinated me that it would start producing things like this. This training set in the neural network was it would kind of produce something and then take the results it had and then feed them back into the neural network and then run it again the next night. So it started having these weird feedback loops. So this ran for about 4 months or something like that. Yeah, so that was an interesting exercise in computer generated art. Again, this is me kind of being a curator. So the computer would gather all the latest headlines and then publish about 36 of these for me to review, and then I'll pick my favorite one. They didn't always work, um, but so I'll just pick the best one, and then it would publish that, and then it would start to learn from that. So this was like a feedback neural network. Again, getting the computer to do my work for me because I'm kind of lazy
Yeah.
and I really like it when the computer does stuff for me. So those are some early ones. And then if I go to, because I lost my tab, if I just open up my own website because that makes things easier.
What was
Um,
that website
there's
that
this
you were
thing about
on just a minute ago?
the website I was on just a minute ago.
Well, yeah, just so in case anyone
And
wants to look at them.
yeah, yeah. Okay. There's, let me do this. So that's the first Tumblr.
Nice.
And then from that one, people can get to this one. This one's good. I mean, I have a real soft spot for this one. I actually think this one's great. The reason why I stopped it after 4 months is because the program kept breaking. It was one of those things where it takes more time. Yeah, I love the computer, but I really wish it would just work sometimes. And I end up having to go kick it like at least twice a week to make it carry on working. So anyway, those are those two websites. I kind of recommend this one for fun. It's amazing what the computer actually came up with some of the time. If I just go
Such a cool
make
idea.
something.
I love it.
So if I go to so Google, when they came out with their neural network stuff, so this is from 2015, I was really interested in how quickly, no, let me rephrase that. Um, a lot of technology is about mass production. So, like the woodblock printing or the printing press is about taking an image and then making 100 of them or 1,000 of them. And then in manufacturing, you kind of have that again with clothing and things like that. But we just reached the point back in 2015 with this process called sublimation printing, where you could do one off images on t shirts and on clothing. And we had this kind of let's see if I can find it. Uh, these things where people started printing. Okay, so this image here, where people started putting computer-generated imagery on clothing and then selling them. And again, this is this thing about generative art that the only way you can make money from it 5 years ago is by turning it into a physical object at the end of it. So all these digital artists who work in that creative space, it's a bit weird to think that they would spend all their time on their iPad or computer code, and then at the very end, the very last thing they do is go, okay, now to make money, I print it out and I stick it in a box and I send it halfway around the world. But this is a very strange point in time when people are doing generative art on clothing, and it was fascinating for sort of this aesthetic that was kind of popping up, which was old Web one aesthetic, like
Mhm.
all the animated GIFs and all the colors and the MIDI files, which happened in the early web, which is when a lot of the people who are in charge of platforms and things now were growing up when they had like Club Penguin and GeoCities and MySpace. So the people who grew up with that on Web one, and then when designers are going, oh, things can't look ugly like MySpace and GeoCities, and everything ended up looking like Facebook and things like that. And then what I really love is about Web3 is people are starting to go back to that Club Penguin, have a hotel sort of aesthetic where people get to do their own thing and taking the the aesthetic design of the web back out of Facebook and places like that, and kind of going back to this. And I see quite a lot of criticism for like Web3 aesthetic. And personally, I think it's really good because it reminds me of this very early web. And at this point here, where people can just make um, custom clothing, just like one-off custom clothing, this type of thing going on here that everybody's kind of hooking into, is great. So this is some of my early generative art exploration of one-off stuff, and having a series of things where they're all unique or different.
I think that's so cool. Is this something that you want to continue exploring as far as like the generative art clothing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, maybe on a higher standard than these all over print things here, but yeah, I mean, there's just cheap stuff that's kind of funny. So in these glasses here, you probably can't quite see that, but there we go. That's a good
Oh
one.
yeah, I see it now.
So having like the 70s pop thing on these glasses, but these glasses cost about £4, $4, $5 to get just like a one-off pair made. I've got over. Hold on, I'll be back in a second.
Yeah.
Uh, like you've got crazy stuff like jigsaws. This is like the world's most horrible jigsaw. It's like one of the 70s pop as a jigsaw. It's impossible to do. Custom printing. Like these these make me laugh. So these are my non-fungible tea towels. This is my NFT tea, and this
It's a
literally
smart
took
idea.
yeah, this took about 2 days to arrive from just going, I've got a stupid idea for a tea towel. Um, and you couldn't do that like like 8 years ago. You couldn't say to a manufacturer, can you just give me a one-off
Mm.
thing? So
Yeah, it'd be very expensive.
yeah, so here's some fabric from Spoonflower that is 70s pop number 62. So this is going to become a suit, a jacket lining. So that's some of that's gone off to the tailor, so they can actually make a jacket out of that.
That's
So
great.
yeah, I'm very interested in this space of people customizing their clothing, but again, this unique one-off manufacturing process that we now have access to.
And so I want to talk about printmaking and plotting. That's something I know you're really big into, the physical.
Yeah.
I know you tapped into the digital, but then the physical is obviously super important to you. Like, how did you get into pen plotting and printmaking?
Again, it's a little bit of being lazy of wanting a robot to draw for me. Again, it's this sort of curator or gardener type of thing where I write the code. So um, if I go back over to my own website, I know I keep jumping to this, but if I go down to let's just pick one of these. So when we have, let's stick a whole bunch more in points. I'll make it smaller. I'll just track my way through this. So, and then we'll get rid of these lines here. I know this is thrilling, but here we go. Get rid of these.
Kind of like a wave.
Yeah. So let me just add some more of this in. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so we can make it a little bit bumpier. So, so you by writing tools like this, and then I can sort of just export one of these out and send it directly to the pen plotter, which is a machine that you put a pen in, and then it actually draws this design. Each one of these is going to be unique. So my workflow is basically I just say plot this, and it saves it, sends it to the plotter, draws it, and then destroys the original file. So you can't ever have that file drawn again. So it's taking a print like traditionally again print is like a printing press, so we can quickly do 1,000 of them. But now that you can send commands to a robot that has a pen in it, you don't need to create identical ones all the time. You can create lots of these one-offs, but it's in a physical form. And again, I really like working with ink. I like working with paper. There's how you bring it all together. So here, if I just show these are a couple of pen plots that are from a recent project. But this is handmade paper. So there's a woman called Steph who you send paper to, old paper, and then she recycles it and turns it into paper. So here, each sheet of this paper is unique, and then the design on it is unique, and the way that the ink interacts with the paper is unique. So I just love how you have this very tactile version. And again, that's what drew me to art blocks is the uniqueness of it. So I can produce an artwork that has 64, 200 things that are obviously part of the same series, but each one is different and unique in a way.
That's so great. And do you have any like favorite pen plotter pieces or screen prints that you'd be able to share with us? I know you're in your studio
Yeah.
right now.
I'm in my studio right now. Look at this. Look at this smashing ringers just
Oh
here.
yeah, that's from the Testaments, right?
Yeah. Was it?
Those are the Testaments right there, like one of the 10.
Yeah, yeah. That's number three, I think, out of the set. There's of them. Yeah. So I've got these are in foil. So well, not in foil, but they're
That's your
shiny. So excuse the
Ghost
reflection.
series, right?
Yeah. So this is the ghost. This is one of the first kind of designs that I did. Um, I really like this one just because the shape of it that kind of got me started. Oh, hold on. There's one here. This is the 70s pop that we're all used to. Um, but what's going on here is I started trying to work on code that will make it look more hand drawn. So it has all these like breaks in the lines. But when you do pen plotting, you try to optimize the code so it doesn't take quite so long to draw. So once it draws one line, it then jumps to the start of the next nearest line. But you end up with this process where it starts meandering over the page in an odd, uh, unhuman way. It's doing it in an algorithmic way. So I started to get into the habit of stopping. So if we have a look at this one, this is actually two 70s pop plots
Oh wow.
that is in silver and gold. And again, it has this algorithmic walk of so the some for some reason this walk of the gold pen is optimal. Like that's the best way to travel over the page. And I kind of have this engineer versus artist part of my brain where the engineer, when I write code, like the thing that's on the screen at the moment, I want it to fill. I kind of have this need for it to fill the whole screen. Um, and that's the kind of the program in me wanting things to be complete. But then I find that when I send those to be plotted, the moment it fills the whole page, it suddenly doesn't seem quite aesthetically pleasing. So instead, I've taken to just pressing the stop button on the pen plotter halfway through, and then just accepting the result. Um, Another one. I mean, this is the ghost again. It's the steer in a frame. This one. Um, what I like about this one is the ridiculousness of the process, which is taking an e-ink tablet. So I've got this. This is like a remarkable e-ink tablet um, that you just scribble on with a pen. Yeah. But then putting this stylus into the pen plotter and then getting it to draw onto an e-ink tablet,
Oh wow.
which is like a digit. The original file is digital. It then goes into an analog process of the pen plotter with the pen into an e-ink that's trying to simulate a physical object and then exporting the data, the SVG from the pen from this notepad, and then turning that back into a physical print. This flipping backwards and forwards between the digital and the physical is something that I find quite entertaining. I mean, it's the other thing I've done with. I'll just grab these down here. Um, these are the screen prints. So this is actually when I was doing the 80s pop thing. We'll come to in a second. I started down the wrong path with the code. Like I was trying to get the code to do something, and it didn't work at all. But it did produce images like this that are really lovely. And then I added some stuff to it. So if I just go to so this is like one of the screens, the pink screen. But I wrote the code to then simulate this half tone pattern that's kind of a bit blotchy to try to make the digital not perfect. And then the studio here is above a screen printing studio. There's a woman called Becky who's really good at screen printing. So I was like, hey, can you screen print these digital things? And she's like, sure, let's give it a go. And yeah, so she did that. If I
So are you guys
there's
doing some
probably
collaborations together?
yeah. So if I go to Foundation, if I go to me on Foundation, so this is where they are. So I ended up deciding to do these 5 things where mixing the cyan, magenta, and yellow together to produce all 3 of them together, which is sold. And then these 2 are sold. These are still available. So 50% of the money from this goes to Becky and her
Oh, that's
screen
great.
printing lightbox fund. So because she needs to get a bigger lightbox because I keep asking her to do bigger and bigger prints. So I was like, and I couldn't do any of this without her screen printing ability. So if I jump to here, it's going to ask me to log in probably. There we go. So this is Becky. So this is who I work with downstairs. Let's just go for that. There we go. I agree. I'll just fill with chatting. So here's some photos of the screen printing process. And again, this is what I find fascinating. Here we go. So the Becky and Hope. So this is Hope. She's the color wizard. So she mixes all the colors, while Hope does all the screen prints. And then it's just this part of the process here of taking that digital code and turning into these physical objects and seeing them get printed is just like a fantastic experience. So I really love it. Um, but I'm kind of old school with the thing. Like I come from a print background, so I always kind of like to have this print element to it. But I mean, the beauty of NFTs is they don't need to be physical at all. It's just that I have this strange attachment to physical things.
Yeah, and I noticed for the
I'll
80s
see if I
pop that
can
you had on
find it.
Foundation, are those pieces, they include a physical piece as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just jumping around all over the place. Let's just get back to foundation. Yeah. So this down here, this is like the this is the number 1 of 8. So if you buy the NFT, you actually get the number 1 of the limited edition and the test print. So this is archival print. So there's only 1 of these. I don't even have 1 of these once
Oh,
this
wow,
is
that's
gone.
great.
So yeah, the NFT holder gets both of those prints as well, which is
That's
nice.
awesome.
I've seen some
Yeah,
nice photos of them all framed up. But the
absolutely.
physical part is all part of a part of the process for me. So if I
I want to
jump
kind of
to
talk about the Ghost series you had. So I know
oh
that's
yeah.
something that's really like near and dear to you. I know, I think Jake Rockland has a piece in his house, and a couple other people on our blocks have collected this Ghost series. Can you talk to us about like kind of the inspiration behind it?
So that's this one here. Yep. Yeah, it's just let me get rid of this. Let's go to 13 ghosts. There we go. This can be good. So yeah, it's just a simple pen plotting thing where you start off with a circle, and then as you slowly move the circle down, you start deforming it based on like a noise function. And it's one of the first designs that kind of gave me that electrical buzz that I got from Bridget Riley again. It's a simple one. It's not well, it's not unique to me. Other people have done very similar designs, but I was like, oh, this feels really lovely. There's something tactile and fabric about it coming from this digital like code, making something look quite natural. And then I started pen plotting it, and on Instagram, I suddenly got a spike in interest from that ghost pen plot. Like for some reason, it sort of really resonates with people. And then when I got my online shop up and running, that was one of the first pieces I sold, and so friends and contacts started buying them. That's when I first got into making NFTs, which is just like actually making some NFTs. So on the screen now, that's some animated versions, which is very unlike me because print is obviously just a
Hmm.
static thing. So to then change the code so it actually has this looping, like all these frames, is quite unusual. So the silver one I showed you down here, um, yeah. So again, printing is because it's such a pain in the ass sometimes to print stuff. It's all kind of limited editions. There's only 12 of those silver ghosts available, and 4 of them are through the NFT. And then the gold ones, I haven't plotted any gold ghosts ever really. At A3, I've only done like small versions of them. So again, this is where I was trying to bring in the static pen plotting physical thing and the digital thing together, and then that was going into some people might have seen this, but like inscribing onto copper plate as well. So that's probably hard to see, but there's a copy. This is copper plate, and then by sticking a very sharp here, this sharp pointy tungsten tip into the pen plotter, it can then inscribe onto plate and then start using that as part of again a traditional printing process. There's one I printed off that's kind
That's
of a
cool.
landscape. So again, this physical thing of deciding that on the Ghost that if I sell all of these, finally doing a 13th one as a large copper plate and then printing it as a one-off really makes fun. And I also assumed that I'd never get to the point of having to do it. It's one of those great art things where I'm going to say I'm going to do this, but there's no way I'm ever going to sell the 13th one, so I never actually have to do it. But at some point I'll probably do that.
Are there any other surfaces that you're hoping to kind of pen plot on? It sounds like you're kind of cool with. I mean, you kind of explore different, options out there, and I think it's cool to kind of push the limits.
Yeah, I think fabric is one. I've seen other people do stuff on fabric. Glass I'd like to go on, and then fabric I'd like to do. So these are zinc plates. So I've got some pen plotting on zinc plates. This is for a different printing project. But I like the paper. There's actually a lot of area to explore within paper. All the different textures, the type of them, the way it works with pens. So I'm not even done with paper yet, really.
Mhm.
But
That's great. And so I'm curious, as an artist who creates physical pieces as well as digital, what are your thoughts on digital versus physical when it comes to displaying your art? And then for you, like if you were to have an exhibit today, like how would you go about displaying your work?
um, that's an interesting one. I don't know actually. I generally don't know the answer to that. I like the physical, being able to show people the work and people being able to come to it, but the digital technology is getting so much better for having these type of exhibitions that I think I'd probably do it as a digital thing now. I actually have again, I'm going to jump to my website. This isn't my work in here, but this work here on the screen. Oh, this will have to load. While that's loading, like an online gallery, I know we have the cyber galleries, which are actually fantastic. They're integrating fully with the NFTs, but uh, having these digital spaces where you can display your work. So if I go into here, so this is, I mean, I don't own these anymore because I sold them to pay for my art studio, but the ability to kind of just walk around um, a room like this. Here's the opera, which is obviously a
Hmm.
fantastic project.
Yeah.
This is the Roy's room, and then over here, one of my favorites. So I just go down this corridor. Here is all the cats.
Oh, wow.
That's the cat corridor. And then over here, I don't own this anymore, but this is the first art blocks piece that I actually owned. This apparitions here.
Yeah, you should tell people the
But
story behind
these
that. You mentioned it earlier. I think that's hilarious.
oh right, so that I'll just go out here because it's nice and sunny out here. I quite like it. There we go. Let's have a look at those. Yeah, so when I first came onto Art Blocks, I thought I have to work out how it works. And then this apparitions thing, whatever that was dropping. And I managed to get in right near the end. And I bought a piece. And I was like, well, this is great. And I'm glad I've got it. But it kind of, and I'm sorry, Aaron, if you're watching this, I went, it's a little bit ugly. It looks like one of these scarves. So so someone actually gave me an offer. I didn't know what receiving an offer was, and somebody gave me an offer on one of them. And I was like, no way, this is worth more than I paid for it. Do I sell it? So I sold it. I thought about it overnight and I sold it. And then when I got into art blocks a little bit more, I was like, oh no, I sold my first art blocks piece that I ever had. But then the person who I sold it to was later, like about 3 months later, actually had it up for sale and was selling it for cheaper than I sold it for. So then I bought it back. So I actually bought my original piece, my first piece back off this person. But then later I sold it for even more when there was the big explosion when the price of everything went up. I was like, you know what? It was just sentimental. I can sell this, and
Yeah.
then that funded this studio that I'm in at the moment. It funded this studio for a few months. So I was quite pleased. Thanks, Aaron.
That's great. And then I'm curious, obviously talking about pen plotting, like if there are people out there in the community that are interested in learning how to pen plot, like what are some great resources that you think people can kind of utilize to, get their feet wet?
Yeah, I'll if I go to drawingbots.net. So this is I'll stick this URL nice and big. Uh, So if you go to drawingbots.net, this is probably one of the best resources because it's got a Discord on it. So if you go down to the Discord chat, anybody who does pen plotting is in this Discord, and they're so helpful. They'll answer any questions for you. Um, and then they have notes about machines and the pens you can use. There's Tyler. Tyler's got a great article, 9 tips to execute generative art with a pen plotter. For the YouTube watchers, I'll stick that big as well. Not that you're ever going to type that in, but that's what the URL is. There's Generative Hut, which I'm going to have to search for here, which has got some up here. It's got some tutorials and tools. So this is a good website to find out more about pen plotting. And I'm going to plug 2 more things, both of which are mine. So if I go back to my website and scroll down to no, I scroll too far. Oh God, where is it? It'll be this tips. Tip no. Excuse me while I scroll around my own website. This is why I had them all open before, and then I've lost them all. Here we go. This is the one. Tiny advice for I want to start pen plotting, and basically it's this. I mean, for people getting into even generative art, or these are the 8 things that I use: loops, random numbers, Boolean noise, sine waves, polar coordinate system, translation, rotation, scaling. Those 8 things, and these are all I've linked off to the P5 to the processing. If you actually want to do pen plotting and you learn just those, that's all you need to do pen plotting. So one of my favorite examples is this piece of artwork here, which is one of my favorite pieces of artwork, and it was done just by straight lines, but placing a piece of string onto the piece of paper to deform the brush going down onto the piece of paper. And that's the code for that is literally a loop that just says draw 200 lines. And you kind of get that, and then you just start building from there. So I would say this, and the other thing I'd tell people to do is go to YouTube. Now this is a bit of a weird one. If you go to my YouTube, I'll make it big like so. If you can find me everywhere on the internet just under revdancatt. But I was going to start making tutorials about how to do pen plotting, but I told myself I'd wait until I moved into my new studio, and that was supposed to happen last year. And in the meantime, I was like, I know, I'll do a whole bunch of videos. Like there's little videos to learn how to use the camera and learn how to edit video. So I'll be ready for when I'm going to make the tutorials. And then I actually got to the point of learning and knowing how to edit videos. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to fill a bit of time until I'm actually ready to do the tutorials. So in the future, if you subscribe to here, I will be putting pen plotting tutorials on there.
Cool, that's amazing. And I'm curious, there's a Powered by Art Blocks, platform called Plotables. Would you ever consider doing a project drop where the art is made specifically as a plottable piece of art?
Yeah, I did. If I go to FX Hash, I've recently done one on FX Hash, which is this Concord here, which are actually
Oh, nice. Yeah, those are the
these
pieces.
pen plots here. So this project, yeah, these are the pieces. So they're all here. But again, if you head off to revdancatt pen plotter, and let me just go down here. This tool here, you can plug your hash into, or you can just randomize it, and then you click one of these to download the SVG file that then goes off to the plotter. So this is exactly what you're talking about. So your generative art is an image, and then it also gets plotted as well. However, what's interesting is I really love pen plotting, but doing the digital work like art blocks and other things, doing these solid blocks of color and working with color gradients isn't something I get to do on the pen plotter. So while I thought I was going to do a lot more stuff that works both on the pen plotter and digital, I actually kind of like keeping the pen plotters physical and the art blocks as stuff that goes into prints, like the purple thing on the wall, and like right, where is it? Like this thing here, which is like a solid gradient of green. I just can't, not the camera shows it particularly well, but that's not stuff that you can do with a pen plotter. So I like to lean into that type of thing of using these colors. And also, this is a bit of a strange one. And I think this is probably, it falls into the category of exploitative. This is one of these services where you send them a picture and then they paint it as an oil painting. So this is an actual oil painting.
Oh
You can
wow, on
see
a
how it's all
canvas.
stapled at the edges here. So this is hand painted by somebody, probably in China, maybe. This is actually a service I used in the UK, but they traditionally go, send us your family portrait photo or your dog, and we'll turn it into an oil painting. I was like, what happens if you send them a real geometric computer generated image? They did? They somebody hand painted a
Wow.
70s pop oil painting that goes up, and it's actually not bad. It's got the gradient colors and the texture's really nice. It smells like proper oil painting art. Um, so again, I think I enjoy keeping. While I'm all for it, I think probably moving forwards, I might keep the two separate. Although I do like physical objects.
Got it. And I know you're in your new studio right now. As far as your studio itself, do you have any essentials that you can't live without in the studio? I don't know, like I'm sure you have obviously specific art supplies, and but any like
Uh,
music or snacks you got to keep around or what?
I know, I kind of know what you're asking with this, but I'm going to give a slightly different answer, which possibly isn't helpful. So one is a fridge, keeping these in the fridge, and the second
Essential.
one is actually the studio. Um, because this studio, I have to walk. It's a 25-minute walk from my house to the studio. I can actually have a proper 9 to 5 day, and it doesn't flow over into home life. So the biggest thing in my studio is probably having a studio and then being able to do that thing where I set off and arrive at work because art is kind of my job at 9 o'clock, and then I work until like 4:30. Then I wind down, I pack everything away, then I go home. So for me, actually, the most important thing is having a different physical space from home that I can come to.
Mhm.
So that's not going to help anyone because on top tips is like, yeah, get a studio that isn't a spare room in your house isn't the easiest answer, but that's probably my answer actually.
No, I think that makes sense because you're able to, just completely focus on your art and not have any distractions. I think that's obviously very important to
Yeah.
have. As far as your website, I think I just want to highlight that it's such a great resource for people. Like you mentioned, as far as pen plotting, you have a couple links where it's like an essay on how to price your pen plotter art, which I think a lot of
Yeah.
people underestimate because you have supplies, time, studio space, shipping, but then also you talk about like how to properly ship your pen plots, and I think that's just some stuff that people don't even think about. So I think it's just great. I just want to highlight your website. I think it has such a wide range of resources for people.
Ah, that's very kind of you. That's because that's paying it forwards. Like there are some websites whenever I started something, I was like, I'm really glad this person wrote this website or made this YouTube video because that helped me at the start. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to do that for other people. So I'm going to try to write the articles that I would like to have had when I started. So it's kind of just building on what people have done before me and then just carrying on the tradition, really.
And I want to talk about 70s pop now. Obviously that was your first project on Art Blocks. Can you talk to us a little bit about the idea behind that project, and a little bit about creating those different pattern designs?
Yeah, it was something I'd been working with anyway for the pen plotter, trying to get all these lines that it's actually a really simple design. Let me just go grab another pen plot.
Okay,
Hold
yeah.
on. If I can find it here. So what people don't realize, actually, I'll take this one out. Hey, when I pack things, the backing boards have the center.
There
Anyway,
you
um,
go.
so this is basically an exploded 70s pop design where all the tiles are individual. So there's only two tiles. There's either a straight tile or a corner tile. But when they're put together, you end up with this design that looks kind of complicated. So if I go grab this hefty thing here, yeah, that's just made up of those two tiles over and over again. And there's another version just here, like a different one. Yeah, see, you end up with this. It's kind of emergent behavior where complicated patterns come out of a really simple rule set. And art blocks I was really confused by the aesthetic of art blocks to begin with. Everything looked kind of not simple, but like early computer graphics, and I couldn't work out why. And then the you only have a limited amount of space to put your code in. I was like, oh right, okay, that really makes sense now because I mean people are doing amazing work with it now, particularly like things like sculpture. But it was suddenly going, oh, I need to have this idea. So having just two tiles that you rotate and then you move and you put together, um, that was a nice simple introduction. I thought I'll go with that. And then once I'd done that, and then starting to kind of control the randomness of where the tiles get placed, so they start off straight at the top and then get more curved towards the bottom. I was playing with that a lot more and keeping the first drop, 70s Pop Series 1, quite simple, but then building on it on Series 2 and like the bonus drops that went in between them, just kind of trying to push it further and further forwards each time until we got to a ghost that had like multi-sized tiles and then color that appeared into them and things like that. So I got a lot of plans for the 70s pop. It's quite an interesting. I spoke to Eric right near the start, and he was saying that he actually wanted more artists to kind of do a series
Mhm.
rather than different things all the time. Because when you look in the traditional art world, like Damon Hirst, his dots and his spots, those works span like 10 years for a whole series. But on then art blocks, you kind of have this, I've done that. So now need to move on to a different thing. And I like this idea of having like a series one, a series two, and then a series three, and kind of an evolution of it that allows you to, I mean, 70s pop is quite abstract, but I do try to tell a story through it in like the little descriptions and then linking them all together. So the airdrops, the haunted, and the afterglow carry on that story, just in the description leading into like the 80s pop and developing it that way. So that's where 70s pop came from, was the need for something to be simple, but then trying to complete create complexity out of those simple rules, and then ending up with this, like I've got like physical objects again. So actually having it mapped. This is done by a woodworker that I work with over in America. He who makes heirloom boxes. Like he's like top of his game for woodworking. And he was like, "Can I work with you to make these like 70s pop puzzle boxes?" Which is going to be a future drop. But again, it's like working with Becky doing screen printing downstairs, or working with like one of America's top woodworkers over in America, just really trying to push how far you can take just like a fairly simple set of rules, and keep going with them.
I think that's great. I'm curious to know to talk a little bit about that suit. I know you had a little bit of a textile behind you with some of that print. Is that going to
Yeah,
be is that the one that's going to be turned into a liner for a suit?
yeah, that's the one. So when back in the Discord, we were chatting with a whole bunch of people in Discord, and I was busy selling a Fidenza, and then we ran a sweepstakes on who could guess how long it would take to sell, and
Yeah,
the
that's
person who got the closest would end up with this 70s pop suit. So the outside. So I've been talking to the guy who's wanted to talk about the style. I've been talking to a tailor, so I've got nearly all his measurements. It turns out the tailor's going, oh, I need one across the shoulders, and I need something down the back here. So I've got to go back and get the last two measurements. So now we can finally get this suit properly tailored with the lining material in it, which again I showed earlier. But yeah, this lovely lining material. But again, this plot is number 62. So it's 70s pop number 62, which I had to buy back from the person because I really like the design, and I like this is perfect for wallpaper. I'm also getting a chair upholstered at the moment in this design for proper upholstery fabric. And I was like, but for me to be able to do that, I kind of have to buy the design back, number 62, that allow me to do all that. That's the other thing I like about 70s pop, is the nifty license allows whoever owns it to then produce work off it
mhm.
um, within the confines of the license, but they could make their own clothing and then sell the clothing with the design on it because they own that design. But yeah,
I think that's so exciting. I'm really excited to actually see that when it's fully completed. I'm sure you'll show it on
me too. Yeah, yeah.
Twitter and everything. Do you have any of your? Are you able to show some of your favorite '70s pop pieces? Throughout all the collections.
Yeah, well, I would have done when I had the tabs open before Chrome crashed. Let me see if I can. Well, this is one of them in Series 2 because I really like. the colors on this one. It reminds me of fruit salad sweets we used to have as a kid. So that's one of them. I'll see if these next tabs are actually the ones that I think they're supposed to be. Okay, obviously I really like this one because of the
Yeah.
color phasing and the rainbow looks really good. Hold on, let me go. Okay, so this one, 206. No, not 206. Which is the one? There's one that I've got. Well, I like that one too, but the purples I really like. One of these you have up on a billboard. I
Hmm.
think it's 153 or 154. Let's have a look. 153. No, let's go for
Yeah.
154. If not, yep, this one here. So this one, you asked me if I could put images towards the I mean, you can talk about this project some other time, but this is actually one of my favorites, just because the color and the gradient and the hues in it. I really like this one. And the other thing I really like, actually, we got them here, is this is the Wisteria color palette from
Yeah.
Bubble Blobby, and I like the 70s pop. Like I asked the artist if I could borrow their color palettes, and I really like this one here where the colors come through. I think I got a couple of these. So there's the Maca Strawberry. Again,
Uh,
this is a fantastic palette, which I nabbed from Messengers, again with permission. And then the Opera Matrix. These opera pieces are some of my favorite on art blocks of all time. The opera is amazing.
mhm.
I particularly like this color scheme, so I asked if I could borrow this. We've got the Watercolor Dreams, which is the nice colorful one. Yeah, we got the Rocklands, those ones, and then the Fermenter here, where I took the colors again. So this one I think down in the middle here is like one of my favorites. But it was very kind of these artists to let me. I messaged each of them in Discord saying, "Hey, I really love that palette. Can I borrow that palette?" Because palettes, as you know, are so important to artists that a lot of artists spend a lot of time building up these palettes. So to be able to say, "Can I borrow your palette?" and them saying yes was a real privilege to be able to work with those. So yeah, I think these are the things that make me smile the most. Is looking at one of those, going, "Oh yeah, that's the opera one." Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, those make for some incredible sets. I'm really glad that you shared those because I think, as, Art Blocks grows or just, the NFTs grow in general, I think it's so great for people to kind of curate their own, galleries
yeah,
or whatever. And I think it just makes for, a beautiful way to display your art and just kind of showcase them side by side.
yeah,
I'm a little
yeah.
bit, I know you shared with us a little bit about your '80s pop series that's on Foundation. Are you? And I know you've hinted on something also about doing something on Art Blocks. Do you have any details to share? I know you did like a FX hash drop recently. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious if you have any upcoming projects.
Yeah, let me or race through. Let me go to the catalog and then I'll race through a couple of things because I know we're short on time.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna do the timeline here. This make timeline makes me laugh actually, um, but it's just like the 70s pop. If we go bigger, so 70s pop and then the super fun bonus pack series two, and then Ghost. After Ghost, I started working on 80s pop and the code did not work at all. I was like, this code isn't working, but it produces really nice images. I'm trying to see if I can grab one of them. I'm going to jump through a whole bunch of tabs to see if I can find. I don't think they're here. No. Oh, we'll do that one though. So yeah, I kind of did this 80s pop thing, and then that didn't work. So then I used that code for the screen prints that are here,
Hmm.
screen prints and the Rizzo prints, and then went and started rejigging the 80s pop, which is an ode to like my childhood of being in the arcades and things like this. So that it's called the 80s pop variety pack because I'm cramming quite a lot of different designs into it. So these are some of the earlier ones where it's building on the series two, but getting these colors to actually run all the way through, which I didn't do on the last ones. They kind of anyway, there's a special rule, but it's more of this type of thing here. Um, so again, the blues on this side, on the right hand side, match the left hand side, and top and bottom, and things like that. But when we go over to wherever I just was, oh yeah, those are tests for 80s.
Those are great.
That's me. I'm just blessed. Here we go. So this one here it reminds me of the Cuba game. So some people might have seen this one where um, you actually have like a little squig character in here.
That's great.
But what's fun about these is the squiggle is different each time, and then you also have these enemies that might look kind of familiar. So I
Got
know
to
you
see a
like your
hand.
generative art in your generative art. Um, so I had fun doing that, like, to actually build like a cube game. But again, it's based on the sort of um, the cube design of 70s pop, the way that actually works and connects over the side. Anyway, there's more to that. So that's one of the designs that's kind of in there. Um, and then you have these other things going on as well. Yeah, so that's a preview of sort of roughly what's happening. But I keep teasing it on Twitter. So if you follow on Twitter, then you'll see some more things come up. But it is an ode to 80s TV programs, music, film, video games. I'm trying to cram it all into 256 mints, which is a stupid job, but I'm plowing through anyway.
Great. Yeah, we all look forward to to seeing that unfold. Hopefully in 2022.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so.
So I know you had a piece in the ARE book, which is the augmented reality exhibition book. For those who don't
Yeah.
know, can you just kind of touch base real quick on like what that is?
Yeah, this is a book where there's a bunch of generative artists. I'll just flick through some of the pages. Did lots of black and white work. So this is put together by the same people as the generative hut that I mentioned earlier. And in here, I've got a ghost. Somewhere in here, I've got a ghost. I'll have to flick through. Oh, there's some good stuff in this book actually. Let me have a quick go. Okay, so here that's the print of the ghost. But the idea behind the book is there's actually an app that comes along with it that's on your phone, and then when you point your phone at each design, then a video pops up that over the top of it that shows them moving or shows a bit of the process behind it. So it's this augmented reality book. It's lovely actually. When they did an exhibition and they had these images up on the wall, and you point the camera at them, and then they start animating, and you get to see them. So I was really lucky to be a part of this. So Pierre, who put this together, um, did a fantastic job. Again, he does generative hut, and he's very supportive of people on Instagram and artists who are doing pen plotting and generative artwork. So yeah, I was really pleased to be part of this book.
Great. And I
So
got one more question before we kind of wrap things up. So mental health, I think, is always so important in this space. Especially with crypto, NFTs, things are moving incredibly fast. Depending on how you kind of view things. But how do you wind down once a project is fully minted, or maybe even during the process of coding a project?
once a project is minted, I have this habit that I've advised the other artists doing of just booking into a hotel somewhere else for like 2 to 3 days, just to decompress because it seems really strange that it is stressful, but it is because you're doing a lot of work till you do the drop. And people are like, "Oh, you sold it all out. You've made a pile of money, which was a lot smaller when I did them. You made a pile of money. You must be really pleased." And you're actually like, "I just feel like I've been pulled backwards through hell. This is really stressful." And you actually need to remove your. Well, I need to remove myself completely to the situation. So I've advised people to just book into a hotel, go somewhere completely different, and then stay off the internet for about 2 or 3 days. Obviously, you've got to support the work afterwards, but just that little time I find quite important. The rest of the time, it's I'm going to say something that is really obvious, but it's just practicing mindfulness, like really. s- Anyway, just mindfulness, not
Yeah.
meditation, not a gratitude journal, just mindfulness. But for me, it's definitely the winding down at the end of the day. I get to the end of the day, I stop, I wind down, and then I go home and I leave all the work back at the studio. Um, so yeah, that's it. Take care of your brain, people. It's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I just think it's something that it's kind of like an elephant in the room. It's just like it's everyone's dealing with mental health in some capacity, and I think there just needs to be
Yeah.
more conversations around it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have much time left, but I actually had quite a big one. It was just after we had the 2 month cool down between drops, and I'd just done my fourth drop, which was the charity drop. And then I was gearing up towards the 80s pop that I was going to have ready for October, I think. But everything suddenly blew up in a really big way on art blocks. And I had this sudden moment of self doubt again, going, this is exactly what I was trying to get away from. When I finished university, I could either be art or do digital. And I ended up in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley, surrounded by all that digital stuff. And I was going, I'm trying to get back to art, and then to claw my way back to physical art and pen plotting. And then suddenly it go, oh yeah, you're doing your physical artwork, which you're selling bits and pieces of, but suddenly over here is digital, and they're going to give you a bunch of money for doing digital. And I was like, I don't want to be necessarily drawn back into that. So I suddenly had this crisis in my head of going, am I doing it for the right reasons? Am I doing it for art? Am I doing it because it's got money behind it? And I actually stopped what I was doing, which is why 80s pop has taken so long, just because I took 2 months off to try to work out why I was doing it, and my reasons for it. And is it really what I want to do? And then getting back to the pen plotting. And I've moved all past all that now, with the thanks to my therapist. Thank you, therapist, which I highly advise getting as well. They're great. Um, but yeah, I've got back to the point of doing it for the creativity. I realize I'm doing it because I want to create it. People have told me for the 80s pop, you're trying to do too much and cram too many things in there. I'm like, but that's the fun part for me, is
Yeah.
trying to stupidly do too much in a small project. That's the bit that excites me. And then when I was going, maybe I'm doing too much, maybe I need to do less, so it doesn't take quite so long. That's when it stopped being fun. And I just had to take that break, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do. But yeah, so it is a real issue. I mean, just before Christmas, I had a real sort of I don't know what I'm doing moment, and I'm quite a small fish in the whole art blocks thing. So yeah, it is real. It is quite a big thing.
Yeah, well, I really, really appreciate you sharing all that insight. I think it's super important for, obviously for everyone to take care of themselves. With that being
Yeah.
said, Dan, how can people reach out to you? Should they have any questions? Maybe you can plug, social media and your website.
Yeah, just find me at revdancatt, two T's, everywhere. So revdancatt.com, revdancatt on Twitter, on Instagram. Probably the best place to get hold of me is if it's about NFTs, is in the Art Blocks Discord, where I'm revdancatt, or on Twitter. If it's about art and pen plotters, probably on Instagram. If you give me a follow on YouTube, that's really good. But that's the useful information. Yeah, just revdancatt anywhere. Just hit me up. Um, yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much, revdancatt, for joining us on After Dinner Mints. It was really great having a conversation with you. I would love to have you on, maybe even for like a Twitter Spaces in a month or two, maybe with just like a bunch of pen plotter, artists out there. I think that would be a lot of fun to have on our Art Blocks Discord or Art Blocks Twitter handle.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like fun. Thank you so much for having me. You're doing a wonderful thing. I've been back and I've watched like a whole bunch of the videos, and it's such a great resource for people. Like everybody's different take on NFTs
Mhm.
and mental health and the artwork. The fact that they're all up on YouTube, I think, is just fantastic. So thank you so much for doing this. It's
Well,
great.
it's a pleasure. I really appreciate you. Yeah, I just love doing this, and I feel very grateful to have an opportunity to talk to artists and other people in this NFT space. With that being said, I have some news and notes to share on next week's After Dinner Mints daytime show. We're going to have on February the 2nd at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We have generative artist Z Jorge. So really look forward to speaking with him on all his projects and what he's done for the generative art world. Um, Additionally, we have Curated Drop this upcoming Monday, January 31st at 12 p.m. Central. We have Thomas Lynn Peterson, who will release their project Screens. Really, really looking forward to that. More details on that drop will be provided in the weekly newsletter that is sent out, which I'll talk about in a second, and then also in the upcoming projects channel on our Discord. Additionally, we have a new series of discussions on Twitter Spaces called Minters and Makers. It's a new weekly show with a variety of artists, collectors, and other notable community members with conversations surrounding generative art. And our next discussion will be tomorrow, Thursday, January 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We have Rich Lord, Jen Stark, Takeshi Murata, and Christopher Rutledge. You can turn into that conversation via the Artblocks Twitter handle, which is twitter.com/artblocks_IO. And those discussions will be recorded and eventually turned into a podcast soon. And speaking of podcasts, I'm excited to share that all of our After Dinner Mints shows will have been turned into a podcast. You can now listen to each of our 30 plus episodes on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, etc. So really excited for that. And finally, we have a weekly newsletter that gets delivered once a week with information on upcoming drops and generative art related news. You can find a link to that newsletter in the description of this YouTube video. Again, I want to thank you, revdancatt, for joining me on After Dinner Mints. As always, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the ArtBlocks YouTube channel. Be kind to each other, buy what you love, set up a hardware wallet if you haven't done so already, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, Dan. Have a great day.
Goodbye.